to make a situation this morning where our hospitals are overcrowded. We have 287 people admitted for whom there are no beds. And this is on top of what we know will be a very difficult couple of weeks ahead, because as the infection rate increases, we know that will lead to additional hospital admissions.
Now is not the right time to cut back the self-isolation period for close contacts of people with COVID-19. That's according to an infectious diseases expert. The Restaurants Association says hospitality businesses are running short of workers and has called on the government to follow the United States government's lead and cut it from 10 days to 5. Professor Sam McConkey of the RCSI says we still don't have a full understanding of the new viral strain.
With the Omicron, I've gone searching for it and haven't been able to find data on Omicron specific SARS-CoV-2 as to what its shedding and its transmissible period are. So that will probably emerge over the next few weeks or months. But at present, we can't say, are you losing 10%, 20%, 30% of your onward cases by cutting from our current 10 days down to 5 days.
Meanwhile, Taoiseach Micheál Martin has tweeted today to say the Omicron strain of COVID-19 continues to spread rapidly and is a serious threat. It follows criticism from Labour leader Alan Kelly, who says there has been silence from the government over record levels of infection and PCR test shortages. And one of Ghislaine Maxwell's accusers says she has faith others will be held accountable following the British socialite's conviction. Virginia Giuffre says the 60-year-old did not act alone after being found guilty of sex trafficking underage girls. It's not yet known when she'll be sentenced. Lisa Bloom, who represents some of the disgraced financiers' victims, says she's relieved about the ruling.
I've been in communication with the 8 Jeffrey Epstein victims who I represent, whose lives were destroyed by this man. I don't represent any of the brave 4 accusers who testified in Ghislaine Maxwell's trial, but we are so appreciative of what they did and the courage that they showed.
It's just gone 2 minutes past 7.
News Talk weather.
Thanks to Ryanair. Plan your summer holiday today with Ryanair seat sale to the beaches of Spain, Portugal, Italy or Greece.
Turning very wet across Ireland early tonight, with long spells of rain turning heavy and the risk of localised flooding. It'll clear to just patchy drizzle later on, but rising winds will reach near gale force in the west later. Lows of 9 to 12 degrees. Now you're up to date on News Talk.
The Newsround on Off the Ball
with Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
This is News Talk.
Now, good evening, you're welcome to Off the Ball. Arthur O'Dea stepping in this evening in the big chair, keeping the Sligo contingent alive and well. Right beside me is Cathal Mullaney. Cathal, how are you?
Hey Arthur, how you doing?
Not so bad, not so bad. We have a good show coming up for you tonight. Great show. John Giles here at 7:30, and through 8 through 9 o'clock, Owen Sheehan will be joined by a litany of Team OTB members to look through the year in sport that was and the year in sport that might well be ahead. Before all that, joining us also, keeping things a little more exotic, Longford's Gavin Cooney.
Hello all. I'm sorry to interrupt and intrude on this great festival of Sligoness that we heard in the airwaves last night and indeed tonight.
Yeah, well, I mean, we have to mix it up just for fairness. How are you keeping, Gavin? How have you been enjoying the holidays?
I'm not too bad yet. Holidays are not quite as dramatic or exciting or let's be honest, enjoyable as we hope that they might. But no, I'm not too bad. I'm on to day number 5 of staring at this Sunday Independence end of year sports crossword in agony. It's just like these cryptic clues I'm not good at. Like, I mean, I sail through the Irish Times. So the Irish Times Sunday Independent do them every year. I sailed through the Irish Times one. Like, I had it done in about an hour and a half. The first time I've ever completed it, and then obviously was filled with triumph and filled with satisfaction. And then along came the Sunday Independent offering, and it's breaking my heart here.
I have to say, I never understood crosswords. I just can't get them. I just never bought into it, especially this time of year. I know people get into them this time of year, and it's part of the Christmas nearly, but no, not for me, I'm afraid.
The cryptic one is tough, and that I've not probably sat down to that independent one, but you have been talking about it now for quite a while, Gavin.
I'm really struggling with it. Sorry, I'm not going to bore listeners anymore because I've bored everyone else in my house about it, and I have bored you about it as well. But yeah, struggling.
Well, look, since we have you here, Aaron Connolly going off on loan to Middlesbrough by the looks of it. Is this a good thing, a bad thing? Don't know what to make of it.
I think it's a necessary thing, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, Stephen Kenny has even said that his career has stalled a little bit. So he's only played twice. I think he's only played twice in the Premier League this season. He started recent games that I watched because he was playing. It's so forgettable. I can't remember the opponents, but I do remember that he was hooked on an hour and just really didn't do anything. Like when he first burst on the scene a couple of years ago, he was so lively and so pacey. He seems to have lost that a little bit. He seems just a little bit slower or more diffident or something. And so he's now got to move to Middlesbrough. So, I mean, he's uprooting, he's dropping down a division and he's moving a few hundred miles north. So maybe that is the focus that he needs. Stephen Kenny was interesting talking about Connolly a couple of months ago after he left him out of the squad in November. Said that he would benefit from a loan move, that it would give him the focus, that discipline of playing Tuesday, Saturday. And with all the backlog of games from COVID, it could be Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday. You could end up playing it toward the end of the season. So you'd have to say, hopefully it works out. And I think it's actually necessary for him that it does work out. There's a line in The Athletic that said that Brighton were just becoming tired by his attitude. So it's sink or swim stuff now. You go to Middlesbrough, they're going well, but like Chris Wilder is one of the more implacable managers, shall we call him, in English football. But he's a very good one. He won't take any, word I can't say on the radio. So it's going to be very interesting, and it has to go well for him.
Well, that's it. And looking here, so he's 22, I think, next month. And it's kind of, as you're saying, from when he burst onto the scene, like I don't remember, I didn't even call it. You remember, like, he really seemed like it was kind of stitched in, that this is it now.
Yeah.
He's already arrived.
Yeah, he burst onto this. Was it 2 goals against Spurs when he burst onto the scene?
Yeah.
But as Gavin says, just a couple of appearances this season, the Premier League 6 in total, I think. You just wonder, is this the move that could ignite things again? Because albeit it is a drop down, obviously, to the Championship, but Middlesbrough are going pretty well. They're challenging for promotion. They've got a decent manager as well. And you just wonder, with that hectic schedule, lots of game time under the belt, and if Middlesbrough can somehow achieve promotion from the position that they're in now in 5th in the Championship, it could ignite his career again. And that, from an Ireland point of view, heading into the Nations League next summer, it could all snowball very nicely over the next 6 months, provided that this deal goes through, which it looks like it will. It hasn't been confirmed officially yet, but it's believed he was in the final stages of finalising it today. But you just wonder, I mean, I think he has to go for something, as Stephen Kenny says, and Gavin referred to that he would be keen to see him get more game time. And he's still very, very young. I mean, there's loads of time here to get his career trending in the right direction again for both club and country. So let's hope it goes through, and let's hope it goes well.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed. That's a place to start. Do remember the Newsround is brought to you by Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. And myself, Cathal and Gavin would only love to hear what you have to say. So, 53106, get your texts in. Cathal, what else is happening in the world of sport today?
Yeah, well, we mentioned Aaron Connolly on the Republic of Ireland front. Some news as well from Seamus Coleman today. He says he's happy to take criticism if it means younger members of Everton's squad don't have to. He's been speaking in an interview for Everton's matchday programme ahead of their game with Brighton this weekend, and Coleman referred to the criticism the team has received given their indifferent Premier League form at present, which leaves them in the bottom half of the table. Some of the quotes from the article: "I'm captain of the club and a familiar face, so I'd rather it be me than someone coming through or a player who has just signed for the club. I can take it on the chin and understand you have to accept the good and the bad together. You can't just read about the good times, you have to take the stick when it comes. I know what I'm doing to try and have a positive impact on the team every day, and I might not be the playing presence I was at 23 or 24, but as captain and in every training every day, I am giving my all, approaching it as if I was a 22-year-old. So that's Seamus Coleman shielding some of Everton's younger players. Very interesting comments, and I think a mark of the player and a mark of the man too.
Yeah, I don't know what you think, Gavin. Seamus Coleman seems to have to be in a position where he's firefighting now for years. He won't go out.
This is the interview that Coleman has had to give, either in a blue jersey or a green jersey every couple of months. He's at the point now where he reminds me of the knight from Monty Python's Holy Grail, like 'tis but a scratch at this point of Seamus Coleman. What I find interesting about that is the fact that he said, I may not be the player I was at 23, 24. Surprised to hear him say that. Yeah. I don't know how often he has publicly said that. And you could say that he's struggling at right back, because this really bizarre thing about Everton is they sign a right back to replace him every 6 months, and then anytime you watch him play, he's playing. They've got no reserve right back on the bench, so he's thrown into action every 3 days, and obviously he's struggling in what is a really bad team at the moment. But I think he's doing. He may not be the propulsive force of the right wing that he was, but he's still a very good player. He's had his struggles this season for Everton, but he's been accommodated to the right of that back three for Ireland and has been excellent. And Ireland are a much better team for him having been in that position than had he not been in that position. So interesting there to see to hear him admit that the ticking of the clock is coming for him.
It is. It's one of those very. I don't know, I often look back and obviously his career has been fantastic, right? And he has all X number of Premier League appearances, X number of Irish appearances, captain of his country, all this. I wish there was just, and maybe it was Euro 2016, but maybe something a little loftier, just a high point, something that he has to hold on to at the end of it all, something tangible to go, this is not what I worked for, but you want something for these kind of players.
Yeah, to point to.
Just to go like, there it is, there's my body of work.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I guess generally speaking, the career that he's had in the Premier League isn't to be sniffed at.
No, not at all.
I know there isn't any silverware of note there, perhaps, that might have been there. Of course, he was mentioned for Manchester United, wasn't he, around 2013 and 2014. It didn't happen at the time, but he's forged a very, very good career, and I think there's still a lot left in him, certainly for club and country going forward. And I suppose you tally his comments there with Romelu Lukaku's this evening. This has come out in the last hour or so, speaking to Sky Sports. He's basically thrown Thomas Tuchel under the bus. To quote from Romelu Lukaku, "Physically I'm fine, but I'm not happy with the situation at Chelsea. Tuchel has chosen to play another system. I won't give up, I'll be professional, but I'm not happy with the situation. But I am professional and I can't give up now." And he's also expressed a desire to return to Inter Milan, not at the end of his career, but when he's at the top level, to win more together. So slightly bizarre. And
why did he leave? If he wants to go back, why did he leave in the first place?
Let's just say it moved me.
This is very strange. It's hard to blame. I don't know. It's hard to blame Thomas Tuchel for falling out with Romelu Lukaku here, because he's been injured for half of the season here, and it was his decision to leave. The fact that he's sounding off already. We're approaching the end. What are we? The midpoint of his first season back is obviously a concern. But Tuchel, he's this great tactical brain. He's clearly a brilliant coach. He just seemed to fall out with people a lot. Although I don't know, maybe correlation is not causation here. Maybe this is more, as I would suspect, on Lukaku's part.
Yeah, but the timing of this at this time of year, I mean, what do you do if you're Thomas Tuchel now? I mean, do you cut your losses in January, or, I mean, there's a long way to go in the season. Chelsea are going to hope that they're in the title race right up until the end. You would think Lukaku would have to play a pretty key role if they are to be in the title race right up to the end. So, I mean, it's the timing of it really at this time and at such a crucial point of the season is very bizarre.
And I don't want to read too much into it either. And who knows how I was thinking. Was it in 2010 after the World Cup with England when Terry started referring to Fabio Capello as Capello? I don't like that with Lukaku. Tuchel is choosing to play. It's a little bit. It's just that kind of. If that is it's not. You wonder kind of what. Well, because everything, they won the Champions League months ago, and it is just kind of it's very dispiriting. This is I quite like Romelu Lukaku, or kind of like what he seems to sometimes be about and how he plays and everything else. But this now is I don't want to say it's a trend. You don't want to put the blame on him because who knows what's happening. But if he bombs out of here after leaving Inter to come here, after bombing out of Man United, it seems a bit of a waste.
Yeah, I feel that this story gets resolved by someone saying, "Oh, the quotes were mistranslated or lost in translation," because given to the Italian press, and everything goes friendlessly along until the summer when either Lukaku or Tuchel will be out. Yeah.
Well, look, Cathal, do you have any good news?
Well, there's action tonight on the football field. So how about that? Manchester United playing host to struggling Burnley in the Premier League. United themselves have struggled against sides battling relegation. They played out a course of 1-1 draw with Newcastle earlier this week, and they laboured to a 1-0 win over Norwich earlier this month. Interim boss Ralph Rangnick has been speaking, and he says the fact that the club has been affected by COVID has hampered his ability to mould the squad since his arrival.
Every coach, every ambitious coach, and there's no difference between other coaches and myself in that area, wants to take faster steps and larger steps forward. But in order to do that, you need to be able to train. And as you know, we had to close Carrington for 4 days. Before that, we had 8 or 9 field players in training. So directly after the Norwich game, and they only came back in small bits and pieces. So in the last 3 days, we were almost back to full strength with regard to the size of the squad. But we couldn't do that much in training. On the other hand, in those 2-3 training sessions, the team looked good. And therefore, it was really a bit of in today's game, a negative surprise, the way that we played with regard to game speed, game tempo, and physicality.
Well, look, if Romelu Lukaku isn't happy at Chelsea, he doesn't really seem anyone as happy at Man United. How do you think this is going to go, Gavin? What's going to happen?
I mean, it's not going to go well.
No.
I mean, poor old Ralph. United, having appointed a series of managers and steadfastly refused to appoint a director of football, have now gone full 180 and appointed a director of football who's not really a manager. He's managed 2 seasons in the last 10 years, twice at Leipzig when they had to tempt him down from upstairs. So, something. I mean, sorry, Gary Neville's punditry that United are a bunch of whinge bags.
Yeah.
The finest piece of punditry I've heard in some time. And it was it's so interesting, and he hit on it, like dynamics between Harry Maguire and Ronaldo. Like, Maguire now reminds me of like some Dickensian child whose homely and domestic bliss has been completely upset by the arrival of some terribly evil stepfather. So Ronaldo is like Mr. Murdstone, and Maguire is David Copperfield in this torture metaphor that I'm now going to drop. But there is even these reports. Did you read that piece in the Daily Mail a couple of days ago where talking about Maguire has been more subdued since Ronaldo arrived and so on? But you could see like all that gesticulating on the pitch and everyone pointing out to each other and like annoyed at each other. Like that is like, to make an obvious point, that is not a good thing. I remember I interviewed earlier on this year for the 42 Darrell O'Connor, who's a really smart, interesting defender who's now at Motherwell, but he came through at Leicester and he played at the under 23s, and then he every now and again was promoted to train with the first team. And I asked him, like, what's the main difference between the first team and the under 23s, obviously allowing for the different talent around you. And he said, when you give away the ball in an under 23s training session, someone will just like say something to you, go like, or like express their annoyance. Whereas in the first team, if you give the ball away or you make a mistake, the only reaction among people is to win the ball back. They realize that mistakes happen. There's no point bowling people out for it, like performatively, for mistakes that everyone can make. And it's also a waste of energy that could be better expanded winning the ball back. So that's a healthy first team environment. And that's not Manchester United at all. And the other interesting thing about Rangnick's comments after that game against Newcastle was he identified one of his problems as being pressing, and he said it began from the front. So the team news, I would guess, is dropping soon for that game against Burnley. I would be interested if Ronaldo's going to start, I have to say. Yeah,
that's very interesting. It's a very interesting insight. It's and the Neville punditry as well was fantastic. Like, even the fact he's there turning on, well, as you're saying, this evil stepfather, turning on Ronaldo, turning on Fernandes. It doesn't. We have John Giles coming up in a few minutes, and I mean, he's against this whole notion of the interim manager altogether. This whole thing, it just thinks it just. There's no, if you know what's coming down the line, he basically, the suggestion that there has to be a sort of a permanence about the manager that the players can rely on to space themselves on. If a manager is going to be gone in a few months, effectively, perhaps, then there's just, everything kind of gets a bit thrown up in the air. So I kind of wonder, like, is there any way back for this? Is there any, like, and I know that's a bit fatalistic, but like with 6 months maybe at most of him in this role, allowing for whatever postponements, do you think it's going to work? Is there going to be a happy ending for that particular dynamic?
Stranger things have happened than United winning the European Cup this year, in fairness. Like, I mean, it's not, I don't think it'll happen, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility. But based off what we've seen so far, both under Solskjaer and the early days under Rangnick, like, they were abysmal against Newcastle. They really weren't great against Norwich, and they're the 2 worst teams in the division. And you see how well Tottenham and Arsenal are performing at the minute. You'd have to say it's unlikely at this point that they'll get top 4.
Well, speaking of that, and I suppose it throws a question open to all of you. After last night, my man said he weren't fantastic, but they won, and they might go as far as 12 points ahead of Liverpool this weekend, temporarily anyway, for a little while. I suppose, Cathal, I'll put it to you. Is the title race run?
I think it is. I think we mentioned it last night. I think it is. I think it is. I mean, okay, Liverpool and Chelsea this weekend, so one of those sides are probably going to drop points, and if Liverpool lose that match, you feel they're probably out of it at this stage. Chelsea, we've mentioned the Lukaku situation there, and things don't look terribly rosy. Their form has been pretty patchy of late as well. Manchester City just look too good. They've been relentless in what they've done in recent weeks. They've been scoring at will, and really at this stage, I mean, the only thing that might trip them up is if their focus switches to Europe come February. But I don't see that happening, and it's very, very difficult at this stage to back Liverpool or Chelsea with any great certainty that they're going to topple this good City side, and very, very hard to see any other result other than a resounding City win in the title race for me.
What about it, Gavin? Is it done?
It's very close to being done. There needs to be a winner between Chelsea and Liverpool at the weekend, I think.
Yeah.
And like, if Liverpool were to win, why are they 6 points behind? I suppose then they're losing Mane and Salah to the African Cup of Nations.
Yeah.
You see, normally you'd say Liverpool at their best, 6 points behind, that's striking distance, but they're not quite at their best anymore, are they? Like, they're like, obviously I've been, like everyone, been watching Get Back on Disney over Christmas. Like, they're in like the third Beatles phase now. So you had the early days under Klopp, which was fun and innocent and exciting. So that was like, I want to hold your hand when the Beatles are breaking America. And then when Liverpool are, winning the Premier League and winning the European Cup through this like perfectly calibrated machine that's beautiful to watch / listen to, that's
stretching this.
That's Sergeant Pepper. Like, and now they're in like, Abbey Road, Let It Be, White Album phase, where they're clearly capable of riffing and like banging out a few great hits. But there's just a little bit of fat there. It's not quite the well-oiled machine that there is. There's like an Obla-Dee, Obla-Da / 2 old drawing home to Brighton thrown in there. So they've kind of crested their greatness as a team, I think. So as a result, I think it might be over. And just very briefly, I'd listened to last night's show, and you're talking about, well, does this now allow Man City focus on the Champions League? I couldn't think of anything worse for City's Champions League prospects than if Guardiola had 6 weeks to think about a knockout tie. Like, Ederson could end up in midfield in that last 16 tie. Like, I mean, that'd be a disaster. They need someone breathing down their neck in the Premier League if they're going to go on and finally win the European Cup.
Well, look, I'm interested in probing this further. Have you seen Get Back?
No.
Cathal? No, you've not seen it. Gavin, you have. Who's your favourite of the 4 coming out of it? Everyone has a favourite. So
before it, I did the usual thing, like the usual hipster thing of saying, George Harrison's definitely my favourite Beatle. But it's not. It's McCartney. Like, McCartney's the best. Like, he's possibly the best songwriter in there, I think. He's a great singer, although I don't think he's the best singer. But he just, he made sure things happened. Like, without him, the whole thing would have fallen apart. He's the slightly irritating guy that insists on things being done, and as a result, things got done. It would have been anarchy adding up in there. So yeah, no, McCartney definitely.
Well, I quite like Ringo's dogged determination and professionalism on the job every day at 9 o'clock in that studio. He'd be there.
Hungover to death, Arthur, though. You can see, smell the booze off him through the screen, like.
Well, look, we're running tight on time. Carl, anything else going on that we need to know about?
Well, just update you on the United team. Ronaldo does start tonight. Varane drops to the bench. A start for Edinson Cavani as well there for Manchester United. Let's move on to some injury news. Leicester striker Jamie Vardy could be out for up to a month with a hamstring injury. He was substituted during their 1-0 Premier League win over Liverpool on Tuesday. Chelsea, on the financial front, have registered an after-tax loss of €173 million up until the end of June this year. The club's financial results, they say, have been affected by the absence of supporters at matches during the early stages of the pandemic. The losses come despite the Londoners' triumph in the Champions League last May. Some domestic football news today. Wexford have announced the signing of experienced striker Dinny Corkin, while Sligo Rovers have secured the services of goalkeeper Richard Brush for another season. And unfortunately, more bad news on the COVID front, possibly for the Premier League this weekend. Norwich are said to be in talks with the officials over the possibility of postponing their match at Leicester on New Year's Day. That's a developing story today. While Swansea in the Championship, they look set to go almost a month without playing a match. They've announced more considerable amount, they say, of COVID cases in their squad, and that's forced the postponement of their game against Fulham on Monday. They last played against Nottingham Forest earlier on this month, and they're not scheduled to play now again until their FA Cup tie against Southampton on January 8th. Atletico Madrid have also been hit with a COVID-19 outbreak, and Barcelona have recorded 3 further positive tests. So unfortunately no good news on the virus front there in terms of football. And in rugby today, Benetton's clash with Zebre in the United Rugby Championship, that has been postponed. It's the 4th fixture to be called off in the league this weekend, including Ulster's meeting with Leinster, and organisers say that they will consider alternative dates to reschedule all of the postponed matches, but that schedule is filling up very, very quickly. Elsewhere, darts, of course, continuing at the Alexandra Palace. Luke Humphries is through to the quarter-finals at the World Darts Championship. Cracking day of action it was too at the Alexandra Palace. Humphries beat Chris Dobie in a deciding set to win 4-3 earlier on today. Mervyn King also staged a comeback win. He's into the quarter-finals for the first time since 2009. He was a 4-3 winner over Raymond Smith today, while Callan Rids saw off the challenge of Alan Suter by 4-1. In the evening session, the one game to watch out for tonight is the meeting of former champions. Gary Anderson goes up against Rob Cross later tonight. James Wade currently leads Martin Clearmaker by 1-0 in their match. And then later on tonight, Peter Wright, of course, a former winner as well, he goes up against Ryan Searle later tonight after at 10 o'clock. And finally, Arthur, in some cricket news that has emerged this evening, 2 Irish players have tested positive for COVID-19 ahead of their trip to Jamaica. Paul Sterling and Shane Getcate have returned positive tests. Ireland are due to take on the West Indies in a 4-match series which starts on January 8th. And of course, earlier on this week, their one-day internationals against the USA were cancelled due to COVID issues. So hopefully everything's okay there and Ireland can play their matches against the West Indies.
Well, and all else struggles, the darts thrives. Cathal, thanks a million.
Thank you, Arthur.
Gavin, thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Arthur.
John Giles coming up after this.
The Newsround on Off the Ball
with Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors. Your chance to win big.
News Talk's 21k giveaway.
We want you to win life-changing cash before the end of 2021. €21,000 is up for grabs. We want to be calling you before the year is out to tell you it's all yours. Enter now. Text the word play to 57599. Over 18s only. Text costs €2.50. Terms and conditions are on our website. Get your entry in by 3 p.m. on New Year's Eve. Then across the Go Loud network of stations, we could be calling you. Remember, you need